Hello, my name is Daria Popova. My group number is 719 and I'd like to present you my course project. I did it with pleasure as I found it very interesting and helpful. I think the best example of successful managers are those who were not familiar with it at all. Choosing a ruler is nice, but I found it a better idea to get familiar with main concepts and notions of management on the person who transformed himself from a slave to the most powerful people in Ottoman Empire. The path of this person is shown in the series called Magnificent Century Kösem. So, I'd like to tell you about Kösem Sultan, who is a prominent figure in Ottoman history. This woman attained heights and continued women's sultanate and kept her dominion for several decades. Why Gesem was a manager? As I mentioned before, she was brought to the palace as a slave, and usually slaves just fall into depression and suffer a lot, but not her. She was highly apt to organize herself and adapt to the new environment and new situation. So she learned several new languages and the rule of the palace. And her incredibly bright mind and charisma helped to attract the Sultan and stand out from other concubines, and thus she gained a political power through him. And after his death, she did not accept the position of a poor widow. She decided to go further, and she became a real ruler of the Ottoman Empire. On this slide, you can see the Gantt chart. It's her plan of conquering the power. Of course, no one knew these notions so many years ago, but I'm sure that she made it in her mind. So, the first and one of the main objectives of Kösem Sultan was to give the birth to the child, especially to the prince. Giving birth to a prince meant the change of stages, so she could become sultana. And after becoming sultana, she wanted to expand her power, so she get her daughters married with ministers. After doing so, she decided to expand even more and to receive the support of the main thing in the state, of the army. Because of the connection with the ministers, she could rely on the help of Janissary of the army, and it's the most important thing. With the help of the army, she could organize a coup and overthrow a sultan. So after Sultan Ahmed's death, his brother was raised to the throne. But soonly after comes another sultan, Osman, and she organized a military coup against him and overthrew him. Getting your son on the throne, you automatically receive the higher title, the title of Valide Sultan. It's impossible to be a manager and not to use the managerial function. Here I'd like to tell you how my character uses them and functions of management. The first function is planning. It's even impossible to reach such heights and gain the power without not knowing what to do. So, planning every step is essential when you have lots of enemies. And Kösem was a great tactician and she used her strategic thinking to make up the plan of conquering everything. And this plan was described in the previous slide. Let's pass to the second function of management, and it's motivating. You cannot move forward without your allies, without your reliable people around you. And once you find them, you need to keep them with you and show them the loyalty and praise their merits. The next functions are controlling and organizing. The motto of the first function is trust but check. Especially systematic check of the progress helps to seek the planned results from the subordinates and to measure the success. It helps in measurement of the progress towards the wanted goals and eliminated of defiant servants and check the loyalty of others. Organization means organizing of the stable system, defining the role position and creating a network where people know their responsibilities and understand who their authority is. Here I'd like to prove you why my character Kösem Sultan uses an open system. And what is an open system? It's the one which allows the third parties to plug into or interoperate with it. And she uses the open system as she interacts with external environments. So she stays at the palace and receives the news from loyal people from the outer world. And she has an opportunity to know everything, what happens in different provinces, where the war takes place, who decided to make a rebel, and the output of this will be growth and taking control over this situation. The next thing is that the open system is able to adapt to the changes and resist the difficulties and ultimately survive. Survival was the main goal. Her life made a lot of challenges for her, but she did overcome them. In her epoch, sultans were changed so frequently, and she had to adapt so fast. And she could despair lots of times, but she didn't do it. It's a management theory that suggests the most appropriate style of management and is dependent on the context or the situation. As we know, something will work in one situation and the same doesn't work in another. And the manager should clearly understand this, pay attention to the situation, and change the managing styles if necessary. I would like to show the managerial characters and the difference between them. I'd like to compare Kösem Sultan with the character of the documentary film from Age of Samurai, Battle of Japan, Toyotomi Hideyoshi. He was a Japanese samurai and daimyo of the late Sengoku period, and he was regarded as the great unifier of Japan. And Sultana couldn't behave like him, and what didn't let her doing so? First of all, I can mention the gender. At that time, women's rights were different from our modern ones, so she had less freedom. And Toyotomi Hideyoshi had an opportunity to claim his desire to conquer Japan, to unify it freely, while Kösem couldn't do so. She acted more discreetly. For a long time, she was an eminence Greece. Hideyoshi had his own approach based on wrath, brutality to people, and recklessness. But in the case of Sultana, it will never help her to subordinate people. It won't make them loyal by no means. This behavior towards them will only spurn them and make a negative effect. Instead of this, she made a strong bond, a strong connection with people, became a friend of theirs, invested in charity, collected people's complaints, and helped them as much as she could. Speaking about her objectives and tasks, she had a goal to give a birth to a prince and to bring up a strong and dignified personality in order to make him a sultan. Here comes the second goal, to obtain power. She could do it by finding loyal and authoritative people who will help her to reach heights and gain her trust. And after getting the power, she had to keep it. And Your goal was to do it as long as possible. As the foes were not sleeping, they were just passionately waiting for the mistake which can be used for their benefit. And harder than climbing a mountain can be just standing on its top for a long time because, as we know, it's gusty on the top. And the last objective was to keep awareness about everything that was going on. The system of life values is determined by not a very large list of them, and this set of values are individual and they influence the person's life. So the values of my character are children and family. She could bear all the difficulties only with the reliance and support of her beloved people. The next value was social status and power. The last value is love. It can be manifested in two ways. The first is just a human love, just like a close relationship with the loved person. And the second one is the mercy, compassion, harmony, and acceptance of divine laws. The interrelatedness of business environment means that different factors of business environment are correlated. So, a change in one factor leads to the change in another factor. And there are direct action and indirect environment. And I'd like to tell you about the relatedness of customers and competitors. It's a direct environment. When speaking about Kösem Sultan from a managerial point of view, the thing she does is the selling of her personal brand. And she provides the services of a good wife, a muse, an inspirer, and the appearance of the competitors or other women affect your relationship with a customer, so-called customer, or sultan. And as we see, the strengthening of the relationship with the customer makes the competitors dissolve, and the weakening stimulates their appearance. And here my video comes to the end. I want to thank you for watching it and for your attention.